Hello everyone, how's it going today? Today I'll be replacing the rotors as well as the brake pads on my 2017 Maserati SQ4. So I went ahead and bought the factory Brimbos. These are the fronts here. I'm going to work on those first, then move on to the rear, and then I have the Brimbos. What I didn't know is that Brembo actually has a factory in India, so whenever I was looking at the tracking it was a little odd. But I'm not going to waste any more time, let's get down to it. So this number that you see here is actually for the front. The number I showed you earlier is for the rear. So now that you have the car lifted up, as well as just a jack stand placed underneath here, the first step you'll do is actually knock out these two pins. I actually have a punch set here that I use to be able to knock them out. Makes it really easy. And this is kind of what it looks like. You just pick the one that you need and just kind of hammer it through. Now once you take these out, there's going to be a second bolt. It's right here. And on the other side, I believe it's a 12 millimeter. So I'll verify that for sure. But you'll take off that nut and then you'll be able to push this pin out this way. So once you have the two pins here knocked out, as well as this bolt removed, and correction, it is a 13 millimeter to take off that nut to be able to push this pin through, you will go ahead and unclip this part here. As you can see, there's a little clip on top. You'll lift it up and then you'll pull off this sensor. So your sensor for the front will go right here. Now once you have that removed, you're able just to pull these pads back kind of against here, and that'll give you enough space just to slide the pads out. So once you have the brake pads taken out, you'll see that there's a bolt here as well as a bolt here. Now I'm using a 3/8. I don't believe it's the correct size, but it is working. So in taking out these bolts, I realized that there is a hard line back here that's connected to the brake itself, so you can't just pull it back and fold it. So what I did was just get a ramp and then use some of this foam to be able to support it. Now the next step is being able to use a 3/16 to be able to take out this bolt here, and then you should be able to knock off the rotor. Now in taking off the rotor, all I did was just put a towel over it and used a hammer and just slightly kind of tapped around here, and then I was able just to wiggle it off. It was actually pretty easy. It took me about 15 seconds. So I don't know, it's good to leave a little bit of grease on here. That's what I think made it really easy. So now I'm just going to slide the new rotor on and put the bolt back in right here. So now I have the new rotor on, the bolt installed, and wow, it looks so much better already. Especially too, the one I had before was all waved and it had a big old crease here at the edge, or I guess you would call it a lip. Now basically just fitting the caliper back on and using these two long bolts to secure it. Now an actual torque spec itself is pretty small. I just snugged it up pretty tight, I guess you would say, right here, but nothing too crazy. And with these they came off pretty easy as well. So the torque spec is probably around 60. So in this Brembo kit, let me try to find the part number for you. So here's the part number for the Brembos that I got. They're nice enough in the kit to include new hardware as well as some grease to put on the back. That's all I have to do is just go ahead and put some grease on the back and slide them back in. Another thing I wanted to mention is that with these pistons, you can use your hand. I just put a towel in there and pushed. You can push them all flat on one side and then put the actual brake pad in. And then once it's in, you can go to the other side and you can reach around actually from both ways and push it flat to be able to install your new one. Pads actually fitted in here. And this one, you'll see right here, there's kind of a little ridge. I don't think it really matters what side you do, but it actually will slide in on this little piece sticking out here. I'll go ahead and do that. So there we go, we have it secured, and then there's a little lip right here in the caliper itself to be able to push the cable back. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this long bolt in, as well as the bottom portion here, and then I'll show you how you actually put the little shield on here. So now that you're looking at this piece, the shorter side will go on the bottom with the longer on the top. All you do is basically hook it into the bottom and bend it around up here so that you can slide the pin underneath this portion, and then you're set. So this side is now complete. Now what I did do is, this wire that's coming out from the actual brake pad itself, I hid it underneath this hard line right here because it was kind of hanging out real loose, and I think that's the proper way to do it. Okay, so now moving on to the rear, you're going to see right here and here, that's where you're going to knock out the two pins, and there's no middle portion, so this piece will come out as well. And if you look in the back over here, right there, that's where your clip's going to be. So basically you unclip it like you did the front, as well as the plastic piece will slide off of this metal tab here. That way you can remove both the brake pads. Now that you have the pads and this pin removed, you're going to move on over to this parking brake, and it actually has two cotter pins, so you'll pull those out, and apart from how this works, these pins actually come out towards you, so you can actually wedge the end of a screwdriver in here and kind of pull it out like you would a nail. So I'm going to work on that now, and once you have that taken off, you pull out the pads. Either they fall down or you pull them straight out the top. So when taking off the caliper, if you look on the back, you'll see that there's a Torx bolt. You'll use a 18 e-Torx socket to get it off. There's one at the bottom, and if you look right up here, get some light, there's another one. So once you take these two, the caliper will come off. This one actually has an easier caliper. Once you pull it off, the hard line is connected just to a brace, so you can just fold the caliper out of the way. Now the next step is to get a 3/16 Allen socket, or I guess you call it a hex, and take off this bolt here, and then you can kind of hit this with a hammer to break it loose if you need to, but you'll just be able to pull it right off. Alright, now I was successful in getting the rotor out. Now if you look on here, I was having a little bit of issues trying to get the back pad out, so if you just pull, I guess you would call it the outer pad out, it gives you enough clearance to be able to slide out the rotor. So everything is working good now. And as you can see, there's a little bit of I guess you'd call it like saltwater deposits or something from the previous owner, so I'm going to take a Dremel and clean all this stuff up before I put the new rotor on. Alright, I have it cleaned up, and now it's time to put in the new rotor and then put this bolt in right here to secure it. So now I have the new rotor on, and it's looking really nice compared to the last one. Basically going to fit the caliper back on, put these two torque bolts back in to secure the caliper. And like I said, I'm not sure what the torque spec is, but really anywhere between 50-60 is strong enough. Alright, so now I have the caliper back on. I'm going to work on the parking brake first before I put the pads in the caliper. Now the only thing to pay attention to is whenever you're putting this back, this long straight edge is what goes on the inside of the wheel. And you have to actually set this in first and then put both of the pins in, because as you can see, you can't pull it out just by itself. Alright, so now I have the pins in here with the shim, so everything is good. I'm going to work on the actual caliper pads now. So one thing that's actually different than the fronts is it looks like it comes with some little shims. So once I actually put the looks like a copper based lubricant on here, be able to put this shim over it and then slide the pads in. So now I have this one on, everything looks good, have the parking brake all put in, have the sensor connected. Now I got to move on to the other side. minus the actual sensor itself. So this is a little bit of a tricky job, but nothing too complicated. And just for reference too, you can see how much life the new pad has compared to the old. So I agree it was about time to replace them. It looked pretty good like this compared to other cars, but considering how the new one looks, it was definitely a good choice. So now all the pads and rotors are done. Yet to take it for a test drive. I'm gonna do that now, and it should make a big difference with the pedal feel compared to how it was before. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. You can always message me on Instagram at WRX_snowboarder. So, like I said, if you have any questions, yeah, just feel free to comment or message me. The install took a little bit of time. I'd say if you started early in the afternoon, you'd be able to finish it up in one day, but it took me 2 because I didn't have the E-socket Torx bits. So, as always, happy driving and enjoy.